You think if you say the right thing, send the perfect message, explain your heart one more time, she'll finally understand what she lost. But the truth is, the more you speak now, the cheaper your value sounds, and the louder your silence could have been. You think closure comes from one last conversation, but sometimes closure begins the moment you stop volunteering your dignity to someone who already had access to it and treated it like it was disposable. Listen carefully. This is the part most men get wrong. They think silence is weakness. They think silence means you lost, you folded, you had nothing left to say. No. Desperate silence is weakness. Bitter silence is weakness. Manipulative silence is weakness. But disciplined silence, silence rooted in self respect, silence that comes from finally understanding that not every betrayal deserves your explanation, your performance, your breakdown, your final essay. That is power. That is maturity. That is a man remembering who he is. And if you need truth like this on a regular basis, subscribe. Not because I need another number on a screen, but because you need reminders when emotion starts lying to you again. You need truth when loneliness starts dressing itself up as love. You need clarity when your pride is low and your standards are about to collapse. Here's what it really means when her guilt is building and you say nothing. It means you finally understand that your job is not to manage her conscience. Your job is not to help her feel better about what she did. Your job is not to rescue her from the weight of her own choices. If guilt is building, let it build. If regret is growing, let it grow. If reality is pressing down on her chest at night because she sees what she traded for comfort, chaos, ego, validation, or short term excitement, let reality do its work. You do not need to narrate it. You do not need to announce it. You do not need to clap when karma enters the room. You just need to step back and stop interrupting the lesson. That's the misconception. You think your silence is for her? It's not. Your silence is for you. It protects your frame. It protects your energy. It protects the last piece of self respect that pain is trying to steal from you. Because every time you reach back into a closed situation and try to force understanding, what are you really doing? You're saying, please see my value now that you refuse to see it when it mattered. That's called self abandonment. That's called handing your identity to the person who already mishandled it. The hard truth is brutal. If she has guilt, she already knows. On some level, she knows. Maybe not in the dramatic movie way. Maybe not with tears on the floor. Maybe not with some long confession. But she knows the difference between a man she could trust and a man she could use. She knows the difference between peace and chaos. She knows the difference between consistency and thrill. She knows. And when you keep trying to explain what she did, you're not increasing her understanding. You're reducing your own position. You're taking the one thing that still has weight, your absence, and replacing it with noise. Why does this happen? Why do so many men talk when they should withdraw, chase when they should detach, explain when they should leave? Because pain makes you bargaining minded. Pain makes you believe if you can just be clear enough, patient enough, emotional enough, available enough, then maybe reality will reverse itself. But that is not strength. That is panic with a polite tone. That is your wound trying to negotiate with the very thing that wounded it. And beneath that panic is the real root cause. You attached your worth to being chosen, not respected chosen, not valued chosen, not reciprocated chosen. So when she pulled away, disrespected you, replaced you, lied to you, played with your trust, or treated your loyalty like background furniture, it didn't just hurt your heart, it threatened your identity. Because if you built your self-image on her staying, then her leaving feels like proof that you're not enough. And once a man believes that lie, he starts performing. He writes paragraphs. He over-explains. He asks for honesty from dishonest people. He asks for accountability from people who benefit from avoiding it. He asks for one more talk, one more coffee, one more chance to be understood. That's not closure. That's dependency wearing the mask of communication. You need to understand something deeper. Guilt grows in silence because silence removes distraction. When you stop calling, stop checking, stop defending yourself, Stop trying to be seen. Stop feeding the emotional theater. All that's left is the truth. No new drama, no fresh argument, no easy way for her to make you the villain just because you reacted. Just truth, just memory, just contrast. She remembers your steadiness. She compares it to the chaos she chose. She remembers your patience. She compares it to the emptiness of attention without substance. She remembers what you offered. She compares it to what she has now. And if there is guilt there, silence gives it room to breathe. That is why men who keep talking never understand the power they keep throwing away. Presence can be comforting. Presence can also become permission. Silence can be painful. Silence can also become a mirror. When you are always there explaining yourself, she never has to sit long enough with what happened. She can always respond, deflect, blame, minimize, reframe, twist. But when you are gone for real, when your energy is no longer available, when your validation is no longer on tap, when your attention is no longer medicine for her discomfort, then she meets something she may have been avoiding for a long time: consequence. And no, this is not about revenge. Get that weak fantasy out of your system. This is not about sitting around hoping she suffers. This is not about posting cryptic quotes, faking indifference, dating random people to provoke jealousy, or pretending you're healed while secretly stalking her life. That's not silence. That's performance. That's still neediness, still orbiting, still chained. Real silence is clean. Real silence says, I am no longer available for confusion. Real silence says, I do not need to win your understanding to keep my dignity. Real silence says, you can misread me, blame me, miss me, regret me, or forget me. I am still moving. Do you know what it costs when you refuse to learn this? It costs your nervous system. It costs your sleep. It costs your focus. It costs your ambition. It costs your masculine core. Because now you wake up checking your phone before you check your purpose. You start measuring your value by response time. You start living in emotional suspense. You stop training the way you used to train. You stop building the way you used to build. You stop leading your own life because your energy is trapped in a courtroom where you keep trying to prove your case to someone who already decided to misunderstand you. You stop. You stop building. You stop progressing. You stop respecting yourself. You stop being dangerous in the way a disciplined man is dangerous, calm, focused, unshaken, moving forward whether anybody claps or not. And then the worst part happens. You become unfamiliar to yourself. You hear yourself begging in ways you swore you never would. You find yourself rereading old messages like they contain hidden scripture. You replay moments that are dead. You start negotiating with standards you once called non-negotiable. That is the cost. Not just that you lose her. It's that you lose your shape. You lose your posture. You lose your internal authority. You lose the part of you that used to know when enough was enough. So reframe this now. Her guilt is not your project. Her guilt is not your cue to return. Her guilt is not proof that the connection was special. Her guilt is simply evidence that choices have weight. That's it. Don't romanticize it. Don't build fantasy from it. Don't translate her discomfort into destiny. A person can feel guilty and still not be good for you. A person can regret losing access to you and still not be capable of honoring you. A person can miss what you provided and still be unfit to stand beside you. Learn the difference between being wanted and being valued. That distinction will save your life. The man who understands this moves differently. Watch him. He doesn't rush to correct every misunderstanding. He doesn't chase every emotional loose end. He doesn't need the last word because he already has the last thing that matters: self-command. He is grounded. He is not cold, but he is not easily reached by chaos. He feels deeply, but he does not leak himself everywhere. He knows pain, but pain does not become his personality. He does not confuse love with access. He does not confuse chemistry with character. He does not confuse history with alignment. He stands where his feet are. He handles his body, his money, his mind, his mission. He knows that attention is a resource. He knows that access is earned. He knows that peace is expensive, so he stops giving discounts to people who only appreciate him when he's gone. That man does not become cruel. He becomes clear. There's a difference. Cruel men want others to hurt. Clear men simply refuse to hurt themselves for someone else's convenience. Cruel men play games. Clear men leave the board. Cruel men posture. Clear men proceed. And when guilt starts building on the other side of that distance, he does not interrupt it with one late night text because he feels lonely for 20 minutes. He lets silence speak because his life is speaking too. His discipline is speaking. His standards are speaking. His absence is speaking. And most importantly, his future is speaking louder than his past. So what do you do now? You stop trying to be understood by someone who benefited from misunderstanding you. You stop sending updates disguised as closure. You stop checking whether she noticed your absence. You stop translating breadcrumbs into hope. You stop making meaning out of mood swings. You stop treating contact like progress. You stop reopening wounds just because they itch. Then you redirect. You train your body until your mind remembers it belongs to you. You clean your space until your environment reflects order instead of collapse. You stack your work until your confidence has evidence again. You rebuild routines so your day is not organized around what you feel. You speak to men who sharpen you, not people who sedate you with comforting nonsense. You read, you lift, you walk, you pray if that's your path. You write the truth down instead of texting it to someone committed to misunderstanding it. You put structure where there used to be spiraling. You put purpose where there used to be waiting. You put standards where there used to be appetite. And when the urge hits, and it will hit, you do not obey it automatically. You sit with it, you name it. This is loneliness. This is ego. This is withdrawal. This is my wounded part looking for relief. That's called awareness. Once you can name it, you don't have to become it. Once you can see it, you don't have to serve it. A strong man is not a man with no urges. He is a man who does not kneel to every urge that knocks. If contact comes, slow down. Do not reward your own history of overreaction. Read it once, then again. Ask yourself the real question, not the flattering one. Not, does she miss me? Ask, has anything fundamental changed? Not, what if this is my chance? Ask, what does this pattern produce? Not, how can I respond perfectly? Ask, why am I so eager to re-enter what broke my peace? These questions will save you from your own hunger. And if no contact comes, good, good, because then the illusion dies faster. Then you can grieve reality instead of bargaining with fantasy. Then you can stop living half-turned toward a closed door. Then you can meet yourself without the distraction of false hope. That hurts. Of course it hurts. But pain that clarifies you is useful. Pain that degrades you is optional. Learn the difference. Maybe part of you still wants her guilt to be visible. You want proof. You want confirmation. You want the apology, the collapse, the admission, the full recognition of what she lost. That desire is human. But don't build your recovery around it, because if your healing depends on her finally saying the words, then she still controls the lock and the key, and that is unacceptable. Your freedom cannot be hostage to another person's level of self-awareness. You want the truth? Sometimes the most powerful thing you will ever do is nothing. Not because you're passive, because you're precise. Because you understand that not every battle is won by engagement. Some are won by starvation. Starve the old cycle. Starve the compulsion. Starve the need to explain yourself into respect. Starve the fantasy that your suffering becomes meaningful if the other person finally admits they were wrong. Let silence clear the field. Let time expose character. Let distance reveal value. Let reality, not emotion, be the judge. And while all of that is happening, build. Build so hard that your old self would look at you and feel embarrassed for ever begging to be chosen. Build until your body reflects discipline again. Build until your finances stop carrying the fingerprints of your emotional chaos. Build until your standards become so stable that attraction alone can no longer negotiate them downward. Build until your schedule has no room for self betrayal. Build until your peace feels so expensive that anyone entering your life understands immediately this man is not available for games, confusion, half truths, or temporary intensity disguised as connection. That's when everything changes. Not because she comes back, not because she regrets it, not because the universe gives you cinematic closure. Everything changes because you stop outsourcing your identity. You stop asking pain for permission to grow. You stop asking rejection to define your value. You stop making one person's choices the center of your existence. And the moment you do that, you become dangerous again. Not to others, but to weakness, to self deception, to cycles that once owned you. So let her guilt build if it's building. Let it crush in silence if that is the weight of her choices. You do not need to add commentary. You do not need to send a verdict. Life already speaks fluent consequence. Your role now is simpler and harder. Hold your line. Hold it when you're lonely. Hold it when memory gets sentimental. Hold it when your ego wants proof. Hold it when the night gets quiet and your mind starts rewriting history to make betrayal look romantic. Hold the line because this was never just about her. It was about the part of you that thought love meant overextending, over-explaining, over-giving, and staying one sentence away from humiliation. That version of you has to end, not because you become heartless, because you become whole. You can still love, you can still feel, you can still care deeply, but from now on, you do it with boundaries, with discernment, with a spine, with standards that do not disappear just because you're emotionally invested. You are not losing your softness. You are removing your foolishness. You are not becoming bitter. You are becoming accurate. You are not shutting down. You are standing up. And that is why you must stop seeing silence as emptiness. Silence can be medicine. Silence can be correction. Silence can be the first clean room your spirit has stood in after months of emotional smoke. So, breathe. Step back. Put the phone down. Cancel the speech in your head. Withdraw your need to be known by someone who did not protect what they knew. Return to your work. Return to your body. Return to your standards. Return to God if that is the center you answer to. Return to the habits that make your mind honest. Return to the mission that gives your suffering a place to be refined instead of wasted. You do not need to chase understanding. You need to embody value so deeply that your life becomes the explanation. You do not need to force regret. You need to become so aligned that whether regret appears or not becomes irrelevant. You do not need to be picked back up by the same hands that dropped your peace. You need to become the man who no longer hands his peace away. Read that again in your spirit. You are the answer, not her apology, not her guilt, not her return. You, your discipline, your standards, your self-respect, your ability to walk away from what insults your soul. That is the answer. That is the comeback. That is the reset. And if you want more truth like this, subscribe now because weak advice is everywhere and clarity is rare. Stay close to voices that remind you who you are when pain tries to make you forget. Stay around men who choose growth over theatrics, standards over impulses, purpose over emotional addiction. You belong here if you are done begging, done shrinking, and ready to become unrecognizable to the weakness that almost took you out.